Baik, selamat datang kembali Bapak Ibu. Kita akan melanjutkan sesi kita berikutnya dengan sesi-sesi yang juga tidak kalah inspiringnya. Dan di panel diskusi ke-6 ini, kita akan memperbincangkan topik dengan satu hal yang sangat menarik, hal yang sering dibicarakan di banyak tempat. Topiknya adalah sustainability reporting. Beyond the numbers. Ya, dan untuk moderator kita pada sesi panel yang ke-6 ini adalah Bapak Imade Suwandi Putra. Bapak Imade Suwandi Putra saat ini bekerja di Indonesia Financial Group. Beliau memiliki gelar Master of Science dari University of Manchester dan gelar Sarjana Terapan dari Politeknik Keuangan Negeri STAN. Sertifikasi profesionalnya mencakup Certified Internal Auditors, Certificate in Risk Management Assurance, Indonesia Internal Auditor Practitioner, Certified Information System Auditor, dan Certified Risk Management Professional. Kepada Bapak Imade Suwandi Putra, kita persilakan dan kita berikan tepuk tangan Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian.
Hello, good morning everyone. It's not morning, okay, it's good day everyone. Yeah, welcome to our panel discussion on sustainable reporting beyond the numbers. My name is Made. I'm going to be the moderator for this panel session. Before I continue, because Pak Sulis previously read you a pantun, I'd like to read one, actually, just to break the ice. But please everyone say cakep after every sentence that I've read. Could you please? Okay. Let's just try for once. Okay. Red tomato grow in the garden. Okay, it's not quite a lot. Let's try again. Red tomato grow in the garden. Green energies grow and expand. A very good day to every participant. Wish you a lovely stay and enjoy this one. Thank you. Thanks for the applause. As we all know, sustainability has become a critical issue for business globally. It's no longer just a trend. It's no longer just a jargon. It's a necessity. But what does sustainable reporting truly mean? And why is it so important? Today, we'll delve deeper into these questions. We'll explore how sustainable reporting goes beyond the mere presentation of the numbers. It's about transparency, accountability, and the long-term value for broad customer and stakeholders. Sustainable reporting has significant impact to stakeholder. I think many stakeholders value our sustainable goals and strategy, maybe in positive or negative way. We can see that some companies' stock price just suddenly increase after they declare that they try to reduce their sustainable goals. I think it's quite challenging, and we're gonna ask this question to our panelists. To shed more light on this topic, we have two esteemed guests joining us today, our panelists. We have Ibu Istini Sidarta, a member of Sustainability Standard Boards at the Indonesian Institute of Accountants. Ibu Istini will provide us with a valuable insight into the development and implementation of sustainability reporting standard in Indonesia. And also Ibu Kitty Andara, Corporate Secretary of Pertamina Geothermal. We know that this company newly established in the Indonesian Stock Exchange have the lowest ESG risk, sustainability risk in Indonesia Stock Exchange. Ibu Kitty will share Pertamina Geothermal's experience in sustainable reporting and how it has contributed to the company's overall success. I'm excited to hear their perspective on this hopefully impactful presentation and session. Please invite both panelists and please give applause to them. Thank you. Please welcome Ibu Istini dan Ibu Kitty. Okay, please take a seat for a moment. Before I continue, Ibu, I have to read your profile because that is my only job here today, actually. Before our panelists gave the presentation, I'm going to read Ibu Istini Tati Sidarta profile. She is chairperson of Sustainability Standard Boards in the Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant. Ibu Istini is also commissioner and member of the Sustainability Committee at PT Austindo Nusantara Jaya, bringing over 20 years of directorship experience and more than 15 years in auditing at KPMG International. Ibu Istini holds bachelor degree in accounting from the University of Indonesia and an MBA from the Anderson School of Business, University of California, Los Angeles. She has contributed as a member of the SAK IAI, chair of the SAK IAI, and member of the SAK IAI since 2003. Our second panelist, Ibu Kitty Andora, Corporate Secretary of PT Pertamina Geothermal Energy, PT PGE Tbk. Ibu Kitty Andora is the Corporate Secretary of PT Pertamina Geothermal Energy, a subsidiary of Pertamina that focuses on renewable energy. She has 20 years of experience in handling communication and managing stakeholders in the Pertamina Group. Her capacity to address and manage the issue of corporate communication and in the contemporary sustainability of business was improved by tours of duty in various level. She is distinguishing herself by managing and coordinating internal and external company communication, which will help her develop into a passionate and compassionate leader with coherence, credibility, and ethics. Thank you, both panelists. Without further ado, for the operator, I think the first slide is for Bu Istini Sidarta. Okay, please welcome Ibu Istini Sidarta. Please proceed to the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the IIA to invite me to speak over here. For the sake of brevity, then we should really just start this presentation. This is a standard disclaimer. What I say over here is not the representation of the IIA yet, because we still have to go through the procedures. So let us start with the overview of IFRS S1 and S2. As you know, the IFRS already make a two different boards. The first one is for the financial reporting, and the second one is for the disclosure of sustainability practice. This is like the condition that we have currently. In Indonesia, the POJK, which is like the regulation from the monetary authority, have required the public companies, including the financial service institution and issuers, to report, to submit like a sustainability report, and they focus on sustainability finance, right? And basically this POJK, because it has been issued back in 2017, the OJK have started to push the sustainability reporting based on the GRI standards. I'm so glad that Morrison yesterday explained that basically the internal auditor standard have been changed because from the checklist, this is like the GRI back in 2017, then there's like a new change and in the formatting, even when maybe the content is right, the emphasis is different, which is like also what happened currently. Companies are required to follow the TCFD framework, which is also being used by the IFRS, ISSB standards. And we can also see the European countries, which is like first and foremost in developing this kind of standards. They have issued like the European Union Sustainability Reporting Standards, which more or less like the same as the SSSB standard, but with like a different emphasis in double materiality. So they also want to know what is like the both impact on the stakeholders and also impact to the company. Well, the SSB standard really emphasizes the impact to the financial condition of a company, the valuation of a company. So what happened in the past, about 3 years ago, you can really see so many logos over here. They have issued like different kind of standard for reporting of sustainability. So the users are getting really confused and they do not really see the value added of this kind of reporting. That is why we are going to, the ISSB or the IFRS S1 and S2 actually try to consolidate all of this and emphasis on the relevance to the financial statements of the company. We can see like the governance structure of the IFRS Foundation. You have the monitoring board, right? Under that, you have the foundation trustees, and under that, you have like 2 standard boards, which is the International Accounting Standard Board and International Sustainability Standard Boards. So we can really see over here that basically they are emphasizing too on the governance. It's 3 tiers of governance. So we can see TCFD influence IFRS S1 and S2 very much. So the one that have followed the TCFD standards of reporting do not really have to go through a lot of pain or as much pain as the one that implement GRI the whole time. So we can really see over here the influence is also on the ISSB influence the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, and also IFRS actually consolidate between the CDSP and CDP and also Value Reporting Foundation, which is SASB and IR. SASB is more like American one. CDP is basically like an international one, and we can see like, then the European too. So this is really an effort, like a worldwide effort to consolidate both all of the sustainability standards. So we can see with this building block approach that basically the IFRS, the financial reporting, it is like reflecting the monetary amounts in the financial statements. We can see that basically the accounting standard is still based on historical cost, but we have like a certain emphasis on valuation. So taking a look to the future and then try to implement what does it means for the current value now. The sustainability related financial disclosure is going to report like a lot of things is using assumptions. So the relevance for the internal auditors is you guys have to understand how to make sure that the assumptions used are actually a realistic one. You have to understand the linkage of all of these things. So it's like in a bigger area. And then of course the biggest one is that the broader multi-stakeholder focus is just they have to report all that the positive and negative impact on the people, environment, and the economy. So in the biggest one, This is basically the GRI reporting, but actually it is not yet that focused compared to the IFRS S1 and S2 or the TCFD approach. So now we have to start the linkage between the financial statement and the sustainability practice disclosure. We can see over here, why are there like two standards? We can see we start from a different point of view, maybe not different point of view, but different approach. But we do expect that at the end, the financial statements and the sustainability disclosures have some relations. I guess this is also like an acknowledgement, a recognition that basically the ISSB already have like a very recognized, acceptable standards on how to go through all the procedures, not like other sustainability standards that have been issued before. Now, let's start with the IFRS 1. So until today, I think back in June 2023, the IFRS already finalized IFRS S1 and S2, Sustainability Standard 1 and 2. And it is actually applicable since the 1st of January 2024. So this is the international standard. The objective is basically, number one, is to report the risks and opportunities. So not only risks, but also opportunities that is useful to the primary users of general purpose financial reports. So we can really start, who is like the primary users of the general purpose financial reports? It's basically the funder, the capital holder, the shareholders. Right, so it is built on the concept of integrated reporting framework, and it have to articulate how it uses and affect resources and relationship for creating, preserving, and adding value over time. So the focus is on the effect of the value of a company. The company will be a better place to explain to the investor how it is working within its business model and value chain to manage the sustainability risks and opportunities that can affect its performance, not only currently, but also in the future. So the most important thing that we can see with this sustainability standard, first and second one, is that the linkage, the link, the relationship to the financial statement. Not like the GRI reporting standard before, usually readers are so confused on what is of all the to the financial statements. These two standards really emphasize on the link to the financial statement. It also said that materiality is important. Do not really need to disclose the one that is not material or have no effect to the financial statements or the value of the company. Because financial statements always look back, but basically the sustainability standard look to the future, the impact of the future of the current practice. So it's different compared to the financial statements. The reporting entity, of course, it have to be the same with like the reporting entity that report the financial statement. So if it is a consolidated statement, you do have to report like a sustainability effect materiality on a consolidated basis. The timing of release is the same. Why the people emphasize this? Because in the past, sometimes the sustainability report is being issued like 2 years after the financial report are being issued. So now it have to link so that readers can really read and understand that. Now, where's the location of this reporting? It should be disclosed as a part of its general purpose financial reports. So usually, I think in Indonesia, it will be in the annual report of the company. It cannot really be be like included in the audited financial statements of the company because the degree of validity and things like that is going to be different. Because we have to understand the sustainability disclosure look forward. It uses so many kind of assumptions. And the opinion of the external auditor cannot really be combined and saying like, okay, the sustainability disclosures is basically wajar tanpa syarat or like, unqualified opinion. It cannot be like that. So it's a different type of opinion. So yeah, we can take a look over here, the qualitative characteristic of a useful sustainability-related financial information. Relevance. So anything that is not relevant, that is not affecting the value of the company in the future, that is not material, do not have to be disclosed. Who decide that it is not relevant and it is not material and it is not really affecting the company value? The main responsibility will rely at the top management. Why at the top management? Because this is not historical cost. This is using assumption, it's looking to the future. It involves like, the strategy, the planning evaluation. Yeah. So we can see the core elements of IFRS S1. First one is the governance. Second one is the strategy. Number 3 is risk management. And number 4 is metric and target. So I'm just so glad that basically Mori-san yesterday explained in the Global Internal Audit Standard, you also use the same framework. You are talking about the governance, you are talking about risk assessment, and also like the strategy. You do have the company strategy, and then you have to make sure that the internal audit strategy is in line with the company strategy. So if we come to an internal audit division and we ask, what is your company strategy? And they cannot really mention that, then it's a big red flag, right? So internal auditor cannot really be just doing the checklist, ticking everything, but you do need to understand what is the company strategy, what is the risk, and for the sustainability internal audit purpose, the question is, what is the sustainability risk that may affect the going concern and the value of your company? So in the qualification of internal audit, you do need to go beyond the numbers, definitely. Why? The numbers, that is like monetary unit. Because now, with the sustainability effect, the metrics and the targets, sometimes the metric is not monetary anymore. IFRS S2, like the CER, the carbon emission reduction, everything is going to be measured in equivalent ton of CO2. Maybe it's not all CO2 because you have 7 kinds of gases that is going to be equate to equivalent S2, CO2. So you have to understand beyond the numbers, right? Beyond the financial matters, but also the technique on how to measure that things. So you have to go across the border, across the department. You have to relate with your environmental engineer, with your operation guys to understand all of the metrics and to determine that. So internationally, the effective date is 1st of January 2024. We know that this is a new one, so not every company. Some company is already more ready compared to the others. But yeah, in 2025, the first year, does not really have to report like, the comparative reporting. Yeah. If anyhow an entity voluntarily provide the interim reporting, then it have to follow this new standard. So 2026, you have to disclose and make a comparison. Now, S2 Many countries actually decided to adopt climate first. That's including Australia. I'm not sure about Japan. I think Japan also have climate first or maybe adopt both, right? They also follow the framework of S1. So the effective date is the same, 2024. The emphasis is on the computation, on the disclosure, including like the plan to reduce the carbon emission reduction. Now, we take a look now on the climate, the governance. First question is like, who is actually responsible for all of this governance? Because many companies just form like a sustainability department, and it have no connection with the operation. It's just making sure that the company can issue a sustainability report. But the data for the sustainability report is actually spread all over. So who is actually in charge for this governance? It will be the top management. Because like in audit, basically financial audit, at the end of an external audit process, the top management have to send a rep letter, right? That they are responsible, they understand, they implement the internal control and things like that. It's the same over here. The governance on who is going to assess the risk, who is going to decide and form like the system, the information system to gather all of this data, it will be the CEO. It will be the top management. A CFO also play like a very important role over here. Why is it CFO? But why it is not like CIO or like other people? Because the CFO is used to gather all the financial information. Now it just tweak a little bit. It's not financial information only, but it is the information related to sustainability, in this case, related to the carbon emission reduction.
Last couple of minutes.
Okay. Yeah, the strategy to manage the opportunities, because this is not only risk, sometimes it's opportunities. We can really see, later Ibu Kitty is going to explain, Pertamina geothermal, it has some opportunity because it's being regarded as a clean energy, yeah, the geothermal. Risk management, again, the one that is responsible to assess the risk is the top management and communicate that to the whole companies. The metrics and target we have talked about that is CER. So IFRS also give like some leniency on the first year of implementation. You do not really have to disclose scope 3 of GHG. So the emission reduction, the GHG is basically divided into like scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 is basically like the carbon that is emitted by the company's own production. Scope 2 is like the carbon emission of the power supply, the energy that the company uses, and scope 3 is the carbon emission of its suppliers and sometimes the end users in their supply chain. So what is the relevance of the IFRS S1 and S2 to the internal audit? Competency, we have discussed about this before. Have to understand what is like the framework of the related risks and opportunities related to operation of the company. Have to assess the adequacy and completeness of strategy to mitigate the risk. Just for example, because we are in Bali, there is like a hotel close to the beach. So it is like, you know, beachfront usually is more expensive than anything else. But because of the abrasion, they lost the beach. So what does it mean to the whole operation of this company? It's all gone. The value is gone, right? So understanding of the risk of the sustainability is important. Then assessing effectiveness of the governance system and assess the information system too, including the recording system. Because we have to understand that recording is also valid, the system is auditable, and is reasonable. Your objective of the audit is going to change too. We can see whether the management plan is basically relevant and have some, should be a connection between the sustainability risks and opportunities. You have to understand the integrity, not only reporting like the entity that is like having a good sustainability opportunities, but also like the completeness of the model developed by the company. Why? Because IFRS has to ask for like a scenario analysis on the preparedness, the readiness of a company if the temperature of this globe globally increased by 1.5%. Well, sorry, 1.5 degrees Celsius. So the completeness is important over here, and also the integrity. The scope of audit cannot really do the checklist only on a control. It's not enough, but it means like assessing the strategy that the top management do. And this is more important to the internal audit as a partner of the top management rather than external audit who is only going to take a look whether it's reasonable or not. So the training and development, the most pressing issue is like understanding how a CR computation is being made and the key risk factor of the company's operation. So this is what happened in Indonesia. We followed that. We have followed like since year 2020. We have established the DKSAK, and we first actually established the task force. And then later, at the end, in November 2023, we do establish the DPSK and DSK. We can see over here that basically this is also following like the 3 tiers governance standard. So we do have supervisory board, and at the end we also have the Congress or our members to review our work. This is the DPSK boards. This is the DSK boards. You can really see like, you know, we follow the sustainability requirement too between like the gender equality. You have like as many women as men too. So what is next? In Indonesia, we know that basically our starting point is less favorable compared to the international or European country or like a more developed country. So we do have to make sure that the ecosystem of the sustainability reporting is acceptable and being ready. But currently, we are going to, within like 1 or 2 months, we are already ready to issue the exposure draft and also to issue the roadmap that we are committed to implement the international standard of sustainability disclosure. So that's my presentation. Hopefully I do not really...
Thank you, Bu Sini. Please give applause to Bu Sini. What I try to cover on what Bu Sini just present is like sustainability reporting, trying to show what is the sustainability impact to the company's value and how sustainability reporting to be linked in the financial statement, the governance, risk management, so on and so forth. Okay, for the next panelist, I'm gonna let Ibu Kitty, please, Bu Kitty, give the presentation. Feel free to deliver in Bahasa or English.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
good day. ACIIA, right? Good day, everyone. Having a good time here today. Why everyone is so silent? Could anyone please give me a response? Thank you so much. You must be very amazed with the presentation by Ibu Estini. I'm here to deliver my information in Bahasa, if you don't mind. I'm going to share some of the sustainability journey of Pertamina Geothermal Energy. But first of all, let me allow to introduce PGE, or the code name is PGEO in IDX. So, next slide, please. PGE, or Pertamina Geothermal Energy, the code name is PGEO in IDX atau di Bursa Efek Indonesia. Itu adalah perusahaan yang berada di Pertamina Group, berada di bawah subholding Pertamina New and Renewable Energy. Dan kami saat ini mengelola 13 wilayah kerja panas bumi dan 1 wilayah kerja penugasan. Saat ini PGE memiliki 672,5 kapasitas terpasang dan bekerja sama dengan beberapa pengembang panas bumi lainnya di Indonesia, sehingga overall capacity panas bumi di Indonesia ini mencapai hampir 1,9 gigawatt pada posisi saat ini. Tapi tentu Bapak Ibu semua mengetahui bahwa Indonesia diberikan berkah dengan potensi cadangan panas bumi yang cukup besar, terbesar kedua di dunia, dan ini memberikan posisi geothermal strategis sebagai tulang punggung untuk pencapaian net zero emission target yang sudah dicanangkan oleh pemerintah Republik Indonesia 2060 atau sebelumnya, begitu ya, dan kemudian untuk menjadi tulang punggung transisi energi nasional. Dari informasi yang saya sampaikan ini, setidaknya ada beberapa key drivers yang menjadikan PGE perlu untuk segera mengimplementasikan dan berkomitmen terhadap ESG. Yang pertama adalah bahwa sebagai bagian dari perusahaan energi nasional, PGE memiliki kewajiban untuk memastikan affordability, availability, accessibility, acceptability, dan sustainability dari energi, khususnya energi hijau. Yang kedua adalah bahwa dengan menerapkan ESG, PGE semakin memiliki kapabilitas untuk menemukanali resiko-resiko yang terkait dengan environment, social, and governance. Dan ini akan membantu kita untuk terus menjalankan operasi kita yang resource-based company. Bayangkan apabila beberapa tahun dari sekarang sesuai dengan prediksi perubahan iklim, terjadi perubahan terhadap curah hujan yang cukup signifikan. Apakah itu bertambah dengan signifikan atau justru berkurang secara signifikan? Itu tentu akan berpengaruh kepada proses bisnis PGE. Membuat ada ancaman kejadian longsor di area-area operasi PGE yang saat ini berada pada umumnya di ketinggian, begitu ya. Atau apabila curah hujannya berkurang secara drastis, justru sebaliknya. Yang air tanahnya berkurang kemudian akan menyebabkan produksi uap PGE terganggu. Sementara itu adalah backbone bisnis dari PGE sendiri. Yang kedua, sebagaimana Bapak dan Ibu juga mungkin ketahui dan pernah mendengar, isu sosial dan managing stakeholders di area-area operasi, industri ekstraktif atau industri yang berkaitan dengan nature based, itu menjadi isu yang sangat sensitif. Apabila kami tidak melakukan manajemen sosial dengan baik, managing stakeholders dengan baik, maka license to operate akan sulit untuk kami dapatkan. Dan kita juga harus memastikan kembali bagaimana PGE memastikan etika bisnis ini dijalankan. Keterkaitannya dengan aspek governance ini tentunya nanti akan membantu PGE untuk meningkatkan reputasi, since kita juga sudah berada di IDX. Dan yang ketiga, sebagai perusahaan terbuka, tentu saja ESG ini akan menjadi sesuatu yang terus ditunggu-tunggu dan ditanyakan, baik oleh investor, stakeholders, partners, bahkan competitors. Jadi sangat relevan bagi PGE untuk segera memiliki komitmen terhadap ESG. Dan kami memiliki keyakinan bahwa ESG ini goes beyond risk mitigation, it is to support business sustainability, bahkan more to that, kita juga tumbuh bersama dengan seluruh stakeholders yang berada di sekitar wilayah operasional perusahaan. There's goes the slide. So next slide please. Ya, sebelum bicara lebih jauh tentang sustainability reports, Saya ingin memulai dengan menyampaikan informasi atau sharing sedikit bagaimana journey-nya PGE kemudian menetapkan apakah yang menjadi komitmen, kemudian hal-hal yang perlu diperhatikan oleh ESG oleh PGE di dalam menjalankan komitmen terhadap ESG ini. Penerapan ESG di PGE ini setidaknya memiliki 6 elemen kunci. Yang pertama dan yang paling utama menurut kami adalah komitmen leadership terhadap penerapan ESG itu sendiri. Yang kedua, bagaimana kita kemudian dapat menentukan materiality topics ESG yang sejalan dengan value dari proses bisnis perusahaan sendiri. Kemudian yang ketiga, bagaimana kita menerapkan target keberlanjutan dan memasukkannya ke dalam KPI agar ini kemudian menjadi sesuatu yang terukur kinerjanya. Yang keempat, bagaimana kita selalu mengkomunikasikan pencapaian-pencapaian mulai dari implementasi sampai dengan pencapaian begitu kepada seluruh stakeholders terkait sehingga terjadi pertukaran informasi, update bahwa apa yang sudah dilakukan PGE ini masih align atau tidak dengan ekspektasi dari para stakeholders. Yang kelima, kemudian bagaimana ini kami integrasikan ke dalam seluruh strategic plan dan bisnis proses perusahaan. Pada tahap ini, saat ini setidaknya kami sudah melakukan alignment antara ESG strategi kami dengan RJPP PGE. Dan yang tidak kalah pentingnya adalah continuous improvement, di mana kita terus melakukan evaluasi dan perbaikan terhadap penerapan ESG dan sustainability di perusahaan. Next slide, please. Iya, jadi kalau dilihat di PGE, ESG ini terdiri dari 3 pilar utama. Yang pertama adalah ESG strateginya sendiri, kemudian yang kedua ESG performance, dan yang ketiga ESG communication and disclosure. Dan sustainability reporting akan menjadi bagian yang penting dari pilar ketiga ini, di mana kita akan mendisclose dan menyampaikan informasi yang terkait dengan penerapan ESG perusahaan kepada khalayak luas. Di bagian materiality topics, ini bagian yang tadi sempat saya singgung sedikit, jadi sebetulnya tadi sudah dijelaskan juga mungkin ya, banyak sekali materiality topics itu from A to Z, bahkan ada banyak hal yang mungkin bagi PGE sendiri tidak terpikirkan akan ada materiality topics terkait dengan environment, social atau governance yang harus dilengkapi begitu ya. Tapi kembali lagi kita harus fokus. Materiality topics apa sih yang akan memberikan added value kepada proses bisnisnya PGE sendiri. Dan kita sudah memilih, manajemen sudah menyepakati ada 14 materiality topics ESG yang akan menjadi bagian dari implementasi ESG di PGE. Dan keempat-empatnya ini kemudian kita bagi fokusnya menjadi zero emission, nature, people and socio-economics, yang kemudian dibantu atau didorong dengan transformation catalyst. Nah, kami memastikan bahwa di dalam zero emission itu tercakup program-program yang membantu mendorong dekarbonisasi. Jadi meskipun tadi PGE beruntung karena sudah menjalankan bisnis yang green energy, resikonya juga negligible risk. Saat ini sustainability risk rating kami berada di 9,3 kategori negligible risk, tetapi kami juga masih tetap diminta untuk terus berupaya melakukan strategi dekarbonisasi. Di antaranya seperti meninjau kembali bagaimana konsumsi energi di dalam operasionalnya PGE, kemudian upaya-upaya program pengurangan emisi lainnya yang juga akan ikut mendorong new green revenue generator. Jadi kalau bicara soal sedikit lebih teknis, kita sekarang sedang berupaya untuk mendorong cogeneration di pembangkitan panas bumi. Kemudian menerapkan getting to know better sih, lebih tepatnya ya, penerapan CCS untuk panas bumi. Kalau di oil and gas udah jalan lebih dulu, tetapi mungkin untuk panas bumi masih couple of decades or maybe years ahead gitu ya. Kemudian ada CO2 liquefaction juga yang menjadi program strategis inisiatif ESG untuk target dekarbonisasi di PGE. Kemudian dari aspek nature, kami memiliki competitive advantage karena 40 tahun sudah beroperasi, area kami di Kamojang itu sudah berproduksi selama 40 tahun dan still continuing sampai dengan sekarang. Dan alhamdulillah kami hidup berdampingan dengan alam dan masyarakat di sana. Kami punya biodiversity program yang terkait dengan elang Jawa di sana dan itu sudah cukup mendapat perhatian banyak pihak. Kemudian kita juga sekarang mendorong untuk bagaimana melakukan konservasi air, karena kembali tadi air ini sangat mempengaruhi proses bisnis utamanya panas bumi, kemudian melakukan pengelolaan limbah. Dan yang ketiga, ini tentu tidak kalah penting, people and socio-economics ini juga harus menjadi perhatian. Pertama, bagaimana perusahaan memiliki komitmen terhadap pengembangan pekerja atau karyawan di internal PGE sendiri, kemudian bagaimana kami mempraktekkan aspek-aspek diversity, equity, and inclusion from within ourselves gitu ya, dari dalam perusahaan sendiri, kemudian kami tularkan itu kepada society atau masyarakat yang berada di sekitar kami, sehingga kami memiliki pengelolaan hubungan kemasyarakatan yang lebih baik ke depannya. Kemudian, ya, kemudian terkait dengan transformation catalyst tadi, bagaimana dari aspek etika bisnis perusahaan, semua aspek ini juga dijaga. Nah, kalau sudah dibuat ESG strateginya, kemudian ESG performance-nya, maka bagian yang menjadi tidak kalah penting adalah bagaimana kita kemudian menyampaikan ESG communication dan disclosure. Tantangannya pada pilar yang ketiga ini adalah kami harus bisa menyajikan laporan sustainability yang menarik untuk dicermati oleh semua pemangku kepentingan dan tidak lupa harus juga bersifat transparan. Next. Ya, jadi sedikit memberikan gambaran bahwa sustainability reports di PGE itu sudah dimulai sebetulnya sejak tahun 2012. Nah, continuing sampai sekarang, terus terang saja yang paling game changer itu adalah setelah PGE listed di bursa. Jadi menjadi perusahaan terbuka atau perusahaan yang sudah IPO, itu membuat kita harus melakukan pendekatan yang lebih masif terhadap implementasi ESG. Jadi pada sustainability reports di tahun buku 2023 ini, kami melakukan adopsi terhadap pemenuhan standar POJK 51, GRI, ISSB, dan juga TCFD. Nah, ini yang menarik, saya punya cerita sedikit Bu Estini, bahwa kita tuh sebenarnya tadinya kepengennya tuh langsung ke IFRS, but we have to realize gap-nya akan terlalu jauh. Jadi tadi sudah banyak ya dijelaskan oleh Bu Estini detail dari isi IFRS. Dan akhirnya kami mengambil langkah untuk mengadopsi TCFD di awal, supaya kemudian di beberapa tahun ke depan, langsung saja ke slide berikutnya, kami bisa menjadi early adopter untuk IFRS S1 dan S2. Jadi mudah-mudahan roadmap ini tuh masih applicable untuk PGE lanjutkan. Sekarang setelah kita menyiapkan laporan sustainability 2023 dengan menggunakan TCFD, nah next plan-nya di 2024 ini kami akan menganalisa lebih dekat lagi apakah gap-gap yang ada sudah semakin dekat, kemudian menyiapkan kualitatif climate scenario analysis-nya, dan di within the next 2 years, 2025-2026, kami berharap juga sudah bisa membuat kuantitatif climate scenario analysis-nya dan membuat prototipe IFRS S1, S2, sehingga kalau memang benar 2027, mudah-mudahan tidak lebih cepat lagi ya Ibu, kita sudah bisa menjadi early adopter untuk IFRS S1 dan S2. Mohon doakan Bapak Ibu sekalian. Iya, boleh next, kita lanjut. Nah, tentu saja banyak challenge yang dihadapi PGE menyiapkan seluruh sustainability reports ini, baik itu mulai dari pengumpulan data dan akurasinya. Jadi kalau disebut sustainability reports itu beyond numbers, betul Bapak Ibu, jadi numbers is there, tapi kalau cerita dan visi yang disampaikan tidak bisa menggambarkan apa yang menjadi visi dan aspirasi dari perusahaan, angka akan hanya menjadi angka. Kemudian bagaimana dengan akurasinya itu juga penting untuk dijaga. Jadi kami berusaha untuk melakukan lintas koordinasi ini benar-benar intens, di antara semua fungsi yang terkait, ESG monitoring mungkin memang berada di fungsi corporate secretary kalau di PGI. Tetapi tentu saja tidak cukup kami sendiri yang melakukan itu. Kami melakukan intensif komunikasi dengan fungsi finance, internal audit, HSSE, kemudian dengan investor relations, sehingga data-data yang dikumpulkan itu juga bisa dipastikan validitasnya. Kemudian pemastian terhadap pemenuhan standar yang kita gunakan juga penting, dan kita juga banyak berkonsultasi dengan expert-expert di bidang ini. Dan tidak lupa memastikan transparansi dan akuntabilitasnya, kita menggunakan verifikator untuk melakukan assurance terhadap hal ini. Next. Nah, bagaimana dengan mengkomunikasikan ESG? Tadi saya sempat singgung di awal bahwa sustainability reports itu kami anggap sebagai salah satu saluran komunikasi perusahaan untuk menyampaikan informasi atau update mengenai implementasi ESG. Nah, bagaimana kemudian proses ini bisa dijalankan? Yang paling pertama dan utama itu adalah bagaimana kita mendefine strategi komunikasinya dan meng-create communication plan-nya, dan ini betul sekali tidak perlu terlepas atau tidak boleh terlepas dari bagaimana perusahaan menetapkan strategi komunikasi yang dijalankan oleh perusahaan sendiri. Jadi ESG itu selalu menjadi part yang integral dengan strategi perusahaan, baik itu operasional, communication, maupun yang lainnya. Nah, yang kedua, ensure kembali bahwa strategi ini tuh align dengan vision dan bagaimana kita ingin PGE dikenali oleh publik. Gunakan semua saluran komunikasi yang ada yang bisa kita kelola dengan baik. Jangan lupa apa cerita yang ingin kita sampaikan, itu yang perlu kita pikirkan dan bagaimana cara penyampaiannya. Kemudian libatkan seluruh stakeholders yang ada, dan kami juga sangat melibatkan stakeholders kami yang paling berharga, itu adalah perwira ya, sebutan kami untuk karyawan di Pertamina Group. Perwira-perwira PGE harus kami pastikan mereka memiliki informasi yang update mengenai penerapan ESG. Still ongoing proses Bapak Ibu, jadi ini bukan proses yang mudah tentu saja. Mereka harus mendapatkan awareness dan internalisasi mengenai apa sih ESG, apa keterlibatan mereka atau kontribusi mereka terhadap ESG di PGE. Dan mereka nanti yang akan menceritakan sendiri tentang ESG ini ke masyarakat atau orang-orang yang ada di sekitarnya ya. Sekarang kan anak-anak muda gitu ya, bukan saya juga udah nggak muda lagi ya Mas. Saya juga masih muda. Kita semua main sosmed lah ya, kita semua main sosmed. Jadi mereka biasanya akan lebih mudah untuk mengkomunikasikan melalui sosial media. Tentunya dengan informasi yang sudah kita sediakan dan awareness yang sudah kita sampaikan lebih awal. Kemudian, nah yang tidak kalah penting juga learning from others. That's why I'm happy to be here, so I can share what we have done and I can learn so much from all of you. Next. Nah, karena ini forumnya ACIIA, izinkan saya untuk menyampaikan juga kira-kira internal audit itu perannya seperti apa, khususnya di PGE. Some of these points sudah ada dan sudah kami rasakan. Thanks to teman-teman internal audit di PGE dan Pertamina Group yang hari ini juga kabarnya cukup banyak join di event ini. Tapi mungkin beberapa masih jadi wishlist kami, sehingga berjalan bersamaan dengan persiapan PGE menuju IFRS S1, S2, peran-peran internal audit ini masih bisa dipertajam, baik dari sisi assurance-nya maupun advisory-nya. Next. Ya, saya juga tidak lupa ingin menyampaikan bahwa ESG itu benefitnya sudah kami rasakan. Jadi meskipun perjalanannya masih relatif muda gitu ya, belum lebih dari 5 tahun, tetapi benefit dan added value dari penerapan ESG ini sudah sangat terasa. Pertama dari aspek transparansi dan accountability, bagaimana kami mencoba untuk building trust atau mendapatkan trust dari stakeholders, para investor, kemudian customer dan employees, dan kemudian regulatory compliance dan enhanced reputation itu juga kami dapatkan. Dan yang paling penting adalah attracting impact investors, karena ya tidak bisa dipungkiri bahwa at the end of the day ESG ini juga diharapkan akan membuka potensi atau kesempatan kita untuk mendapatkan green financing. So there we are right now, PGE 9,3 di Sustainalytics dengan kategori negligible risk. Alhamdulillah sudah ada cukup banyak award dan recognition terkait implementasi ESG yang kami terapkan, baik dari aspek environmental, sosial, termasuk juga governance. Dan baru saja kemarin untuk laporan sustainability atau sustainability reports kami mendapatkan posisi 49 dari top 100 di 2023 Vision Award Report Competition. Mungkin itu sharing saya untuk sesi ini, Pak Made.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Give applause to Bu Kitty. Terima kasih banyak Bu Kitty terkait dengan paparannya. Memang kalau kita hanya berbicara angka, tentunya belum tentu terdeliver dengan investor, stakeholder, creditors dan lain sebagainya. We have to deep dive gitu ya terkait dengan komunikasi sehingga mereka bisa memahami apa yang kita lakukan dan apa impact-nya terhadap mereka dan juga terhadap perusahaan dalam jangka panjang. Okay, we have around 10 minutes for discussion. I'm gonna open first round. Is there anybody want to ask question? Mungkin satu di sini, satu di tengah atau oke. First Bapak di situ. This in the middle, okay. Bapak di belakang, and then on the right wing. Okay, maybe first two question. Tolong please say your company and name. Please feel free for asking in bahasa or English, Pak. Monggo, Pak.
Ya, selamat siang Bu. Saya Aditya from Schroders Indonesia. Maybe my questions would be addressed to Bu Istimi. The first one would be, are you able to share some color on what would be the impact to the fair value and recognition of asset and liabilities in adaptation of IFRS S1 and S2? And building up to that, do you foresee any specific trends that can be stylized among Indonesia corporates? And the second one would be, what do you think would be the biggest changes required among internal controls, be it in the form of reporting lines, organizational structure, that you think would be common among companies in Indonesia? Thank you.
Okay, thank Pak Aditya, thank you. The second question.
Okay, hello, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Irfan from Pertamina Hulu Energy. I would like to ask about the various sustainability report standards that are mentioned before. What are the factors that differentiate one standard compared to the others when viewing ideal method to report sustainability? Because I see that the bottom line is actually whether we could report sustainability to various stakeholders. Thank you.
Pardon, please repeat once again for the what's the differentiate the standard between the standards and what's the bottom line? What did you say?
No, I mean like I think that the bottom line of reporting sustainability is whether we could report the sustainability condition in the corporate in appropriate way. I mean like, so what's differentiate one standards compared to the others, and what's differentiate the view of whether what's the ideal report sustainability?
Thank you very much. Okay, the first question is I think Bu Istini, what is the impact of the fair value on the asset and liabilities on the financial statement, and then the control requirement for the IFRS implementation?
So it really depends on the industry you are operating. Just for example, like a power generation company, when they use like the coal as the feedstock, yeah, and they depreciate that for 30 years, it's not going to be like 30 years anymore, right? Because they do have to follow the regulation, which is like called transition risk. So you have to compute that. So that will impact the fair value of the company. The same thing with like in the mining industry, the nickel, the refinery, the washing plant. How much is like the effect? What is like, is there any new technology that is going to decrease like the GHG? If there is one, then you need to consider that. And sometimes, the decision to buy like this new equipment, it will cost you more. So if you do not really, if you disregard like the CR, the GSG aspect, then you are going to buy like a cheaper one which emit more GSG, right? So, but if you consider the CCER things, the transition risk, like the regulation, what will be like the future, then it's different. Yeah, but if you're like a company like geothermal energy, it's already like a green energy. Of course, there is not going to be any effect on that matter. Like construction, office building, you do have like the air conditioned system. Can you make like another system that is like, emit less GHG? That's the question. So you have to consider this. As an internal audit or as a management, you do have to talk to your technical guy, to your engineering.
Thank you, Bu Yasini. I think it's answered the question? Yeah, okay, enough for the first question. And then for the second question, I think I'm gonna give it to Bu Kitty, because you just elaborate why Pertamina Geo Energy use TCFD instead of other standards. The question is, what's differentiate those kind of standard? What kind of different angle? And why did you choose, why did your company choose to implement the TCFD instead of other standards?
Ya, terima kasih pertanyaannya untuk Mas yang di belakang. Alhamdulillah, tadi saya kurang bisa mendengarkan dengan jelas sebetulnya, tapi ya kira-kira begini penjelasannya. Tadi sempat saya singgung bahwa dengan kondisi PGE yang sudah IPO, ada sebagai listed company, demand dari investor terutama ya terkait dengan implementasi ESG ini tuh sangat banyak ya, sangat besar, dan setiap kita melakukan perjalanan, whether it's deal roadshow, non-deal roadshow, ataupun pertemuan-pertemuan rutin dengan investor, they keep asking about ESG. Nah, kenapa memilih TCFD? Tadinya udah mau langsung ke IFRS, Mas. Tapi ternyata mengkoneksikan antara ESG implementation dengan financial impact, it's not that simple. Banyak sekali gap yang harus kami penuhi. That's why kita kembali lagi napak di atas bumi gitu ya. Memetakan lagi posisinya PGE saat ini tuh sebetulnya sudah ada di mana. Dan dengan kondisi yang sekarang, maka manajemen waktu itu mengambil keputusan, kita menyepakati TCFD dulu aja. Kita mengadop frameworknya TCFD dulu untuk pelaporan ini. Karena dari situ saja sudah banyak gap yang harus dilengkapi. Analisa kita terhadap climate risk itu harus menjadi sebuah dokumen yang tidak ada kalau kita menggunakan pendekatan atau sustainability report dengan menggunakan TCFD. Nah, sekarang begitu kita mau bergerak ke IFRS S1 dan S2, dan ini kembali lagi kalau ceritanya tentang PGE memang kami akan berusaha untuk meet dengan kebutuhan shareholders dan stakeholders serta calon investor. Karena memang kajian atau laporan sustainability yang dilengkapi dengan financial impact itu akan segera diimplementasikan. Tadi Ibu Istini sudah menjelaskan dengan cukup detail seperti apa. Nah, kita nggak punya banyak waktu, harus sekarang mempersiapkannya. Dan harus berani mengambil langkah-langkah yang quite significant. Karena mengumpulkan atau menutup gap yang ada itu juga butuh effort dan kolaborasi yang luar biasa dari seluruh fungsi yang ada di internal perusahaan. Mungkin kira-kira seperti itu jawabannya Pak Mada.
Thank you, Bu Kitty. Before I'm gonna open the second round of question, I think Bu Isti, do you want to add on this, because you just show us that the differentiate between some kind of standards and also what we need to be done in the future, because every company someday gonna be they are have to be implement IFRS, right? But from PGO, Bu Kitty just said, right now we only can deliver or use the TCFD framework, and what's obstacle gonna other company faces to implement IFRS. I think you can add on that.
Yeah, we recognize that basically sometimes the communication of even like the operation strategy and operation risk is not even being communicated well. So we are like a step behind on that matter. So that's why we will give like, like a longer transition period. But as what Ibu Kitty said, right, she already like explained the roadmap, right? First, you are going to implement the TCFD. Usually, you will need like about 1 or 2 years to change the governance, like to implement the system. But after that, you are ready to implement the IFRS S1 and S2. Yeah.
Thank you, Bu Yustini. At the up, I think the time is up, but if anybody still want to ask one question, okay. If not, I'm gonna give this time to our speakers to give a closing statement. Start with Bu Kitty. Ingin bilang sesuatu, Bu, terkait dengan ini?
Ya, kalau sebagai takeaway ya buat kita semua, mungkin yang ada di ruangan ini akan lebih spesifik ke teman-teman yang berada di fungsi internal audit. Saya ingin mengingatkan kembali bahwa ESG itu memang harus dipahami oleh kita semua, memahami proses bisnis dan visi misi perusahaan, apa yang menjadi strategi perusahaan, apakah itu sudah embedded dan align dengan strategi ESG, kemudian how to communicate our ESG strategy and implementation, itu kayaknya sudah menjadi keharusan deh. ESG itu sekarang tidak lagi menjadi sesuatu yang nice to have, it's a must have. Otherwise, ya implementasi atau impact-nya, negatif impact-nya maaf, itu akan dirasakan oleh perusahaan sendiri gitu. Dan kita kan juga tidak menginginkan dalam waktu beberapa tahun ke depan perusahaan mengalami harus suffer gitu ya, karena tidak memitigasi resiko-resiko yang saat ini sebetulnya sudah jelas di depan mata. Saya berharap dengan keberadaan saya di sini sharing di antara teman-teman semua, teman-teman di fungsi internal audit semakin ready gitu ya, siap untuk mensupport pencapaian ESG di perusahaannya masing-masing dan mengambil peran penting untuk adopting IFRS S1 and S2. Mungkin itu Pak Mada.
Thank you. Bu Istini?
Okay, whether we like it or not, the international standard is coming, and Indonesia, I'm so proud of Indonesia. I'm an Indonesian, right? But we also live in an international world, and we do need like foreign investment. We need foreign financing, and if we do not really implement that international standard, that is going to affect our cost of capital, that is going to affect our access to the international financing. So I have experience implementing the system too, going through all the pain, right? It's not easy. You start with the tone at the top. The management, the top management have to understand the risk of the sustainability approach and the IFRS reporting requirement. And internal auditors are actually the best partner of the top management, at least that's what I was expecting when I was a CEO, right? So guys, please start to step up, understand, expand your horizon, beyond like the numbers, beyond the checklist. Try to understand the strategy of the companies, try to understand the risks and opportunities, so you can becoming like the best partner to the top management of the companies.
Thank you, Bu Sini. Ready or not, we have to be ready because the standard is coming. So thank you both our finalists. Please give more applause to Bu Istini and Bu Kitty. I think it's the closure of the session. That's all from us. I think everybody's are preparing for lunch, so I'm gonna give it back to the MC. Thank you.
Terima kasih banyak, terima kasih untuk moderator. Berkenan untuk berdiri Ibu dan kita akan menyaksikan penyerahan token apresiasi yang akan diberikan oleh Bapak Muhammad Panji Winata. Kiranya berkenan Bapak Muhammad Panji Winata menyerahkan token of appreciation kepada para narasumber. Tampaknya Pak Panji, baik Pak Indra. Kami persilakan Pak Indra untuk berkenan memberikan token of appreciation kepada para narasumber kita. Ibu Istini Tati Sidarta dan Ibu Kiti Andora. Terima kasih banyak Ibu untuk waktunya, kesempatannya, serta tentunya insightful presentasinya. Terima kasih banyak, terima kasih. Terima kasih banyak Ibu, terima kasih sudah berbagi pengalaman dan pengetahuan bersama dengan kami. Terima kasih. Mohon kiranya berkenan foto bersama terlebih dahulu Ibu-ibu dan di tengah boleh? Iya. Bapak Ibu, kita akan bagi-bagi door prize dulu sebelum makan siang. Jadi bisa ditahan dulu ya di dalam ruangan ya. Kita berikan tepuk tangan dulu Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian. Terima kasih banyak. Juga kami ucapkan terima kasih banyak untuk moderator Bapak Imade Suwandi Putra.